morning. Good morning. Good morning to you. Okay, so we have a new song today that I chose. Woo, new song! It's not to the very end, so suspense will build until then. All the other songs you know, and they're great, so if you would, please stand with us and sing.
Me
once a long time ago, I chose this song too, but it was a really long time ago. No, it's just one of those songs where like the lyrics sound kind of like the metaphors they use are kind of traditional sounding, but I also really think it's cool. Like, your love is devoted like a ring of solid gold. It's like, I think it's so cool because like God commits to us and there's no guarantee that we're even going to commit the same way back. That doesn't work like that in marriage. Imagine you marry someone and your partner's like, yeah. Like, or you're fully committed to you and they're like, yeah, I mean, maybe. I'll see how I feel. Let's do a trial run of marriage. Yes. Sure, I'm going to actually pour out my heart like you're pouring out your heart. Anyway, I think that's really cool, this song, and it talks about fathering the orphan, and you know, there are people who grew up as orphans and also grew up in like the foster care system, and that's a whole different thing. But how it's like, I feel like we're all orphans, not discounting the horrible things that people deal with when they're in those kind of systems, but I feel like it's a normal thing as a human being to feel like you don't belong. And I think that this idea, a good idea, job of like reminding me when I listen to it that like God, father, mother, loving parent is good at like bringing all people into their house, you know, and reminding us all that we have a place. So. A covenant of old, love is enduring through the winter rain and beyond the horizon. With mercy for today, pray for you have been, pray for you will be. Pledge yourself to me. Your Let's sing that one more time together. Your praise will ever be on my lips, ever be on my lips. Your praise will ever be on my lips, ever be on my lips. Your praise will ever be on my lips, ever be on my lips. Your praise will ever be on my lips, ever be on my lips. Searched the world, but it couldn't fill me. There's empty place, treasures that fade, are never enough. You came along, put me back together. Every desire now satisfied here in your love. Hey, oh, there's nothing better than you. There's nothing better than you, Lord. There's nothing, nothing is better than you.
Good morning, everybody. How's it going? Yeah. Give it up for the band one more time. Gianna, thanks for sharing what you shared before the second song. Touched my heart a little bit. And I don't know, do you guys ever feel like you were part of the Island of Misfit Toys? I know I did, yeah. And so we made a church for those people. So I'm thankful we found each other. And if it's your first time here today, thankful you found us too. And maybe you can be a misfit as well. Do me a favor, everybody take your phone out. We've got a special website just for you. It is diff.church. You don't have to put .com at the end or anything, just diff.church. And that is the best way to kind of connect with us. You can tell us how you found us. You can tell us what you really loved from today, what you want to see more of. Also, you can give us prayer requests, anything that's going on in your life. We would love to pray with you, whether it's something good or bad. We'd love to celebrate or just kind of support you in prayer in any way we can. Also, if you believe in what we're doing, diff.church is the best way to donate and make sure we can keep doing it. And that would be awesome. Special announcement. We never, ever do this. We're having Sunday Fun Day today after church. If you don't know, every week we hang out after church, even though there's a Bucks game today. Is anybody excited about the Bucks game? Just me? Okay, cool. Go Bucks. We are going to Urban Brew and Barbecue. A couple minutes after the service, it's just going to take us to break down. And then Urban Brew and Barbecue is right over there. Meet us there. We'll have a good time, and maybe the Bucks game will be on. Announcements. I'm missing something, right, Hannah? Oh, yeah, duh. Why am I even here? I don't know. Okay, this is a big deal. The 30th of this month and the 6th of next month, we're not going to be in this room. We're going to have service at the Mar. Dave plays drums here, and Heather sings here sometimes. And they have like a really cool performance space, and it's right there. It could not be more convenient. You'll park on Central or just off Central. Make sure you follow us on social because we'll give you all the info you need to know. The first week, we are actually doing what we call biography. I think we've done it 3 times, and basically it's an opportunity for some of you guys to come up on stage and tell stories, which I think is super cool, and I really love it whenever it's a full house for those weeks because it means that you're supporting your own people around you, and that's really cool to me. The theme is going to be joy. So I think we've got 5 different speakers who are going to be telling stories from their personal lives loosely related to joy. So please come to that one if you can, and don't come here, go there. And then the week after, we will also be there, and we'll probably do kind of like a chill, acoustic kind of vibe like we did today. Did you guys like how it sounded? Yeah, it sounds cool, right? The Mar is like a little smaller than this, so I'm thinking probably we'll do the Cajon again and just like, I don't know, sing it out and have a good time. Sound good? Thanks for being here today. It means a lot. It's really rainy, and you could have stayed in bed, but you came here so that you could clap it up for Hannah.
Thanks.
You got it. I told her specifically not to mute me this week.
Normally I cut him off immediately. I'm like, you're done. You're done. Y'all know why we're going to be at the Mar, right? Because if you're sitting over there, the giant bubble in the floors get fixed. It has been there since before COVID. Wow. That's that sound was Jarrett almost having to go to the hospital. Jarrett, I have very important things to talk about, so we cannot have your interruptions of falling over yourself. Normally that's my job. You guys don't know, but the band, goes through their stuff, and normally there's a big drum set here, and pretty much every Sunday I'm like, can we move this 6 inches over on account of I don't look where I'm going? And I will die. And then Jarrett will have to preach. And he said that he's got one good one. He told me this, and I'm just keeping that in my back pocket for someday when I get the stomach flu, and I'm like, Jarrett. Okay, I'm gonna stop. I'm so excited about our tricky subject that we get to navigate together today. You all like tricky subjects? Yeah. I got a couple honest people being like, no. That is narcissism and church abuse. Woo! Okay, so if this makes you feel some kind of way immediately, just take a big breath and blow it out through your mouth like you're blowing through a straw. It's okay. We're going to be okay. We're going to do this together. So we're actually building on what I talked about last week which is on conflict and conflict resolution. And next week, we are going to talk about healing and moving forward. This is a different church. We talk about stuff most churches don't talk about. And so today, I was like, well, you know what? We're going to start the year off with a bang, talking about how other people suck. No. Also me, okay? You'll hear, I'm going to give you some personal examples. So, our scripture from today, if you have been around church, you most likely will have heard. It is actually one of my favorites. I know I say that most times. I'm like, this is one of my favorites. It really is. This is Jesus talking. Jesus talking is my favorite. And it comes from Matthew chapter 7, verses 15 through 20. This is what it says. Beware of false prophets who come disguised as harmless sheep, but are really vicious wolves. You can identify them by their fruit. That is, the way they act. Can you pick grapes from thorn bushes? Or figs from thistles? A good tree produces good fruit, and a bad tree produces bad fruit. A good tree cannot produce bad fruit, and a bad tree cannot produce good fruit. Every tree that does not produce good fruit is chopped down and thrown in the fire. Yes, is my favorite line. Just as you can identify a tree by its fruit, so you can identify people by their actions. I don't remember who said this. Please forgive me. Y'all probably know. But it's that line that's like when someone shows you who they are. Believe them. Does anyone know who said that?
Well, that's the same thing as the doctor says doctor.
Yes. A little bit more eloquent, though. Now, we've all met someone who can make us feel amazing in 1 minute and like horrible the next, right? Like they like us, they're on our side, and we are like on cloud 9. And then the next minute, they're like controlling or suspicious or gaslighting us, and we're like, what's happening? It makes us feel crazy, and we might feel like uncertain or afraid, like we have to walk on eggshells around these people, like I don't know what to say, I don't want to upset them. We may start blaming ourselves, like maybe there's something wrong with how, like I just don't know how to relate to them. And what we're actually encountering almost every time is narcissism. The story, it's really easy to be like, narcissist, right? But what actually the story that unfolds is usually much more complicated than that, because no person is ever wholly good or wholly terrible. We're all good and bad, right? There are smart, seemingly wise, really influential people who are at the same time manipulative and abusive and conniving. They got charm and rage, wisdom and harm, righteousness and wickedness, to put it biblically, Jekyll and Hyde. Okay, so when we get to the place, this is what happens. We're like, oh my God, abuse has occurred. Like, this is not okay. And then usually we jump straight to labeling everyone who has ever remotely offended us as a narcissist. But that also is a form of power, a way of coping with our own feelings of insecurity and disappointment, because health and healing does not come from simply flipping the script and now we're the powerful one and we get to label people just like someone has labeled us, right? It's a tricky thing to navigate. Firstly, because experiencing this kind of thing really makes us doubt ourselves and our intuition. And then secondly, because once you see it, you start seeing it everywhere, all the time, which makes it really hard to trust again. Now, if you're like, well, how do I know? How do I know if I have experienced narcissistic leadership in church? Don't worry, I'll tell you. I got a whole list of things. We'll get to that in a minute. The key is for it to be a pattern, okay, not a one-time event. We are all narcissistic at some point. I am, you are, everyone is, kids especially are. I don't know if you've met a child, but like they are so self-absorbed, and they have to be. That is developmentally appropriate. It guarantees their survival. They have to think that everything is about them. But what happens is people get stuck, usually because of trauma in their childhood or some other reason. They never grow past that need to control people and control situations, and this often leads to harm, but especially in church. Why? Why is this so dangerous and so prevalent in church? Because, like we can talk about it in the world, but we're in church. And this is a problem in church. So Henry Nouwen said this. He's just a very wise person, and if you're a reader, you will love him. He said this: the long, painful history of the church is the history of people tempted to choose power over love, control over the cross, being a leader over being led. And the temptation of power is greatest when intimacy is a threat. It seems to me, perhaps to you, that the church should be the last place narcissism shows up. Right? No. Well, no, in reality, it's one of the most frequent. Why? Because when we go to church, we often hide whatever is going on in our life behind a mask. We fake it. Why are churches breeding ground for abuse and cover up? Because we have created an epidemic of hiding and dishonesty where no one can show up as their true self. We have created spaces sanctified by faith, bless God, where no one can say what is going on in their lives or who they really are or what they are really struggling with. And when it comes to pastors and leaders, this is a problem because narcissistic traits are often labeled as like the good things, the things you want in a strong, charismatic leader. You want them to be confident. You want them to have a clear vision. You want them to, I don't know, what did I write? A thick skin. The ministry, with a capital M, is like a magnet for narcissistic personalities. I mean, who else would want to speak on behalf of God every week? Like, a large amount of people struggle with public speaking. Guess who does it every week? And with divine authority, right? Like, I am up here to give you the message from the Lord. Like, that's, I told you I'd be talking about myself at some point, right? But the problem is hidden in the souls of people who get up on stage, just like everyone, is a massive fear of failure, profound shame, secret addictions, and guess what keeps the shame and the fear at bay? Power. Power. I don't know what that's from, but I feel like I was quoting something. Power. Narcissism is a mask, right? It is an armor of self-protection. It defends the fragile self that is within, while attacking and alienating and oppressing other people. I have had the incredible joy of being to many pastors' conferences. They're not all bad. Nothing ever is all bad, right? Just like people are not always all bad. There is a lot of learning and connection that take place at pastors' conferences. However, if you attend one, especially an evangelical type one, you can just feel the anxiety in the air. Like, it is just in the air. Like, if you touch someone and it shocks you, static electricity of anxiety in the air at pastors' conferences. There is comparison and competition and showmanship and dress and addictions. Substances, yes, we gotta keep those secret because not allowed. But we can absolutely just be like, well, we're addicted to social media, we're addicted to fitness, we're addicted to approval, and it's totally fine. We're like, that's how you grow your church. And you can feel it. You'll be like, oh, mate, hey, man, I haven't seen you in a while. How are you? And you can tell that person is like wound up. Like they are about to, okay? And they're like, everything's fine. It's so nice to see you. Did you know that clergy trust has dropped significantly in the last 20 years? Clergy is a fancy word for pastors. So technically, I'm clergy. It makes me feel very important. Pastors are now seen as less trustworthy than judges and police officers. And I could go off on a long tangent about our views of them and how those systems don't protect us in the ways that they should, et cetera, et cetera. But people who speak for God every Sunday are less trustworthy? Come on. People don't trust churches anymore for good reason. Church attendance is declining. Oh. Let me tell you what this does, though, to a person who is trying to be a leader, especially a person who has tendencies already or has unresolved trauma in their life, and they are shoved into this without proper training or spiritual formation or doing the hard work. The pastor's number one job is actually not to read the Bible or to be there for people. It is to do the hard work of healing on themselves and then to be available for people. But because the church in America is like, well, just kind of fading away. When you start a church, like the next generation of pastors and leaders, the pressure on them is so immense Because if you're going to do it, if you're going to do the thing, you have to fix this. You have to be good enough and smart enough and inspiring enough and creative enough and confident enough to bring back revival to the church, okay? Because these people who have gone before us, they just weren't doing it right. And if you don't do this, no one's going to do it. You have to pump up the energy and the light show to 1 million so that you can entice all of the poor, sad people who are bored with church or tired of church or don't want to get up on a Sunday morning or perhaps, this is the part that never gets said, perhaps are sick of the abuse and harm that has been done in church and are not dealing with it anymore. You have to somehow overcome that with your light show so that you can bring these people back inside and save their souls. It's up to you. No pressure. Henry Nouwen also said this: we long to be relevant, spectacular, and powerful. I'm speaking from personal experience, okay? I was born in church. I went to school for church. I did graduate studies in church. I have worked in church. I'm currently church. Church. I'm a walking billboard for church. And I have seen so much heartache and so much damage caused by people who just dive headfirst into it without getting training and without doing work on their own souls. For centuries, these ecclesial systems have privileged certain people over others, particularly men and connected people and educated people. The structure, the structure is not to blame for the existence of narcissism, but it certainly creates an environment where it grows unchallenged. And who is our example to follow? Jesus, a humble servant who died, who was murdered, who was willing to die for other people. But over centuries, our goal to be humble and to be a servant has been transformed by hierarchy and patriarchy into a desire for power. Specifically, characteristics like grandiosity and entitlement and the absence of empathy. These are seen as good things. These are seen, you can distill them into that one word, charisma. Oh, they're just a charismatic leader. Oh, they just have that certain something. Something that was extremely popular when I was in seminary was the idea of servant leadership. You guys ever heard of this? We read books about it. We held conferences about it. We built statues about it. And I am not kidding. At my alma mater, there is a very expensive water fountain statue of Jesus washing feet in the center of the campus. And they put it together and they were like, ta-da! This is what we're about. Also, it cost $1 million. Probably not that much. I may have my numbers slightly skewed. But it definitely didn't cost $5. And again, it's not all bad, right? I don't think there is anything wrong with gathering to discuss how we can more effectively lead people. I don't think there's anything wrong with getting together to talk about how we can serve each other more, or in memorializing a part of Jesus' journey that is beautiful. However, the tension's always present. The pressure is always present. It's not just servant leadership for the sake of servant leadership or being like Jesus. We might tell ourselves it is, but underneath, it's that constant simmering of productivity culture and the demand to grow your church. If you don't do it, no one's going to do it, right? Leaders are viewing their tasks as holy and sacred. Did any of you who work just in the world, you have a job, do any of you view your tasks as holy and sacred? If you're I'm going to pick up the phone and answer this person's question. Holy and sacred. I'm going to clean the bathroom at my job. Holy and sacred. That might be hell, actually, depending on who was in there. Amen. If you view your tasks as holy and sacred, right, that as a concept demands that you get to go above and beyond to help, to please, to serve. Your very worth as a leader is tied to your capacity to give. Okay, fine. But what does that turn into? Pastors have extremely high rates of burnout and depression. They spend so much time denying their own needs to keep the machine of the church running that everything becomes very shaky And when you're tired, faking it is second nature. And if you grew up in church, faking it is your nature. At least, I'm not going to speak for everyone. In my church. Sorry if anyone's watching. No matter how much healing work you've done on yourself. So here's an example. I worked at a church once, hosted a huge event every year, like clockwork. It was a big deal. But one year, probably shouldn't have happened. It had been a really, really, really hard year on the pastor's family. Their child had been really struggling. There was a death in the family of someone that was really close to them, and there were some major health issues. Anyone who was close to that person could tell that they were exhausted and depleted and barely keeping it together. They were faking it every Sunday. So probably the best course of action would have been to take a year off. Just cancel it. No, we're not having it. Rest. Of course it happened. Of course the event happened. We can't even consider the possibility that something that is clockwork would be canceled, right? And in fact, it was like bigger and better than ever, and people loved it, and it was fine. It was fine. It was fine. It was tradition. Everyone had a great time. But the pastor's levels of emotional reserves and physical reserves got even lower. That strain got that much greater, right? There was no mental or physical space to recover from the burnout or for decompression or healing. And this all resulted in some significant upheaval and organizational fallout and major problems in the staff and congregation only a couple months later because they couldn't keep it together anymore. When a person is trapped in this pattern of faking it and overdoing it, they cannot step away. They, in their minds, are essential. What they are doing is essential. Being on the hamster wheel is essential. And if they step off the hamster wheel, not only will everything collapse and the church will not survive, they will also have let God down. No pressure. This isn't in my notes. Here's an example from my life this week. Nova got some kind of viral thing. That's my baby, if you don't know. She's 1. Kids apparently get sick sometimes. And she had a fever of almost 104, which to us is horrifying. But kids get this, okay. But obviously she was miserable. She was checked by her pediatrician. Everything is fine. She totally kicked it in a day and a half. She's completely fine. But obviously she was also sucked onto me like a koala for about 3 days straight. And we did not sleep. And we basically, for dinner one night, I found some frozen tater tots. Who knows how long they had been in the freezer? And that's what we ate, tater tots. Nothing on my to-do list got done this week. When I say nothing, I mean nothing. Except, the baby's not really on my to-do list. She was the list. She was the whole list. Nothing got done. And I usually on Instagram post a couple-minute video called Theology Thursday on Thursdays. It's 5 minutes or less. And on Wednesday, I was I don't have anything to say, and I'm tired, and I can't do this. And I texted Jarrett, and I was I'm not doing it. I can't do it. And in the back of my mind, because she was a little bit better on Thursday, so probably during a nap time, I could have rambled about something. I can talk for 3 minutes. Okay, talking is what I do. Well, I could make up something for 3 minutes. But I tell you specifically why I did not. Because the second I was I don't think I can do this week, my brain was oh my God, you don't even have time. You don't even care enough to make a 3-minute video on Instagram. None of your to-do list got done. None of it. You can't even do this one thing and this one thing. And if you don't make content, then people are going to stop engaging with your church. And if people aren't engaging with your church, they're just going to never come to church again. And that whole thing is going to fall apart and it's going to be terrible. And guess what? We're here. Sunday still happened. Okay? Unless you're all ghosts. We're still here. Everything is fine. But because my brain instantly was this depends on you and your skills of making a 3-minute video, I was okay, we are not doing this. And a few years ago, I would not have had the strength to say that. So I've been doing a lot of work on myself. This is not a brag. All day Thursday. which is supposed to be my day off. I'm not very good at that, but it was supposed to be. All day I was like, I should really be making that video. So I got to practice, just like I tell y'all to do, reminding myself of what is important. And you know what was important? Holding my baby. That was important. And we're still here. And it was important to me to actually stop and be like, I'm not letting God down if for 1 week I can't do the thing. Actually, I have to do work on myself before I can do it for anyone else. It's not essential. It's not essential. And I don't know, this goes for anybody who's doing anything. If you are in that pattern and you're like, I have to do this, I have to do this, I have to do this, it's essential, everything's gonna fall apart if it's not me, oh my God, what am I gonna do? I don't know. If that is what's happening in your brain, you have got to stop. You have got to take a step back. Actually, the world will still be here. We're still here. There's many more Thursdays. Charles Spurgeon said this, appear to be what you are. Take off your mask. The church was never meant to be a masquerade. We were never meant to have churches like this, where the leaders fake it every single day, and they're so trapped in fear and shame that they're trying to control everyone around them. When leaders act like that, it trickles down. And then the staff, and then the volunteers, and then the everyone who attends. Pretty soon, everybody's faking it. Bless God. And hiding what they're struggling with and trying to control each other. And people who feel the sting of narcissistic personalities, they've been led to believe that it's their fault somehow. Like maybe it's your lack of humility. Maybe it's your failure to submit to godly leadership. Please hear me, because this is a definitive way you can tell that you are in a narcissistic system. Feedback is never honestly given. If you cannot share your feedback from your heart, and I don't mean like be a jerk and complain about every single thing, but like if you are genuinely just sharing your heart about something and you get shut down immediately or made to feel like your experience is not valid, or if you have to qualify your one like tiny negative with like 17 positives, that is a perfect breeding ground for abuse. Just as you can identify a tree by their fruit, so you can identify people by their actions. I think it's important to name the system, not just the people, because the system is the thing that allows the abuse and harm in the first place. If we had systems that didn't allow this, it wouldn't be a problem. And the system is always like parading around how special it is. Look at the unique way that God is working in my church. Well, if you say that, who can dare to question God's work? If God is for us, who can be against us? When the mission gets tied to God's movement, right, people are much more likely to question their own judgments instead of questioning God's obvious blessing. And people in staff positions or volunteer positions, they're forced to collude with this system and keep quiet about anything they disagree on, because if you refuse and you challenge the system, it will chew you up and spit you out. I might add, because this is currently the struggle in so many churches around the country. This is especially apparent in regards to LGBT inclusion and affirmation. A difference of opinion on this or a different reading of scripture will result in dismissal of otherwise valuable staff members or volunteers or people. Have y'all all heard the term gaslighting? Okay, so this is actually a term that comes from a play that was written in 1938 in Great Britain called Gaslight. In the play, this guy terrorizes his wife and makes her doubt her perception of reality. So he does all kinds of terrible things to her. But one of the things that he does is he hides random household items around the house and then accuses her of misplacing them. And she eventually is so uncertain about what is real and what's not. She can't trust her own judgment because in her mind, she didn't touch any of these things, but he's telling her that she did it and it's over there now. The only thing she can rely on is the dimming of the gas lights outside every night. That's her only thread to reality. That is where the term comes from. It's a word to describe someone dismissing and invalidating your experience. Telling you, oh, it's not that bad. Oh, You're just overreacting. Narcissistic leaders develop an uncanny ability to make people feel crazy and uncertain and confused and insecure and bewildered. Like, abuse in any circumstance is terrible, but really, there's another layer when you add God on top of it. So how do you know if this is something you've experienced in your life? Here are 5 things. Number 1, it's characteristic of spiritual abuse: silencing. Spiritual authority is invoked to silence someone. It could be for any reason, because of their gender, because of who they are as a person, because of a difference of opinion, because of the hierarchy. If you speak up, you will be shut down. And you'll probably feel shame about even trying to speak up in the first place. Like, your character might be attacked. You'll be told you had no right to speak about that thing. You don't know what you're talking about. You're not educated enough on that subject. You're pushing heresy. Oh, we just love to use that word. We're shutting people down. Heretic. Do you even know what that means? Any kind of line we can use to shut people being honest down. Silencing. The next one is moralizing. This is legalism in service of abuse. It is particularly harmful because then the behavior code, the moral code, gets elevated above actual people. What is more important? The thing that you wrote on a piece of paper or an actual human being who is standing in front of you? I know someone who, as a teenager, was part of a faith community. She grew up in it, and she got pregnant unexpectedly. She was really young. She had a secret abortion. She didn't tell anyone anything about it. For 20 years, she didn't tell anyone. And I can share this story because she shares it all the time, and I have permission. I'm not just like putting her business out there. The reason she didn't say anything is because she knew that if she spoke up on either of those topics, she would have been completely cut off from everyone she knew and her support system. The moral code was more valuable to them than the actual human being who was standing in front of them, who desperately needed support on how to navigate this surprise that she found herself experiencing. And she was so alone that she carried that by herself for 20 years. She was already in a difficult situation, and it was made so much worse because she had nobody she could talk to. The victim, the victim of moralizing always feels shame around who they are when they cross these artificial boundaries. We're like, well, it says it on the paper. Obviously, you're bad. What? That's not how any of this works. The next one is certainty. This is when a specific belief system is offered to you as inerrant and infallible, the only possible right interpretation of Scripture, and your good standing in the community requires you signing off on the entirety of it. Just like this sense of tribalism usually here, like, we have the truth and you do not. And if anyone deviates or raises questions, they're like ostracized or shamed or maybe feel stupid or like they don't know what they're talking about, or if they're like a paid staff member, their jobs are threatened. They'd be like, well, again, the paper says we have 16 fundamental truths. I can say that because I was raised Pentecostal, and in the Assemblies of God, you do have 16 fundamental truths, not to mention the hundreds of position papers that you also, they're not like fundamental, but also you should agree with them. Because if you don't, if you're listening on the podcast, I'm making a face. If you don't, there's like an implied threat. The next one is experientialism. Again, just bless you if you grew up Pentecostal, okay? Because what is above everything else? Speaking in tongues. Yeah, I have met, I know wonderful people who speak in tongues, and it's wonderful, right? I also know people who speak in tongues who are class A jerks, but God has blessed them. And the sweet little old lady, there was a little lady in the church I grew up in, she never spoke in tongues a day in her life, and she was the kindest, gentlest, most loving person I've ever met. And people are like, well, you just got to keep praying for that experience. How about let her be? Okay? There's this sense of oh, well, you're just, You just don't have enough faith in God. I just don't know why God hasn't blessed you yet, but you just really got to just keep seeking the Lord for the thing. Why hasn't God given me the same experience? What's wrong with me that I can't? There is nothing wrong with being given a gift by God. Nothing. When we turn it into, I have this and you don't, that's not okay. That is abuse. And finally, this is number 5, unquestioned hierarchy. Hierarchy in abusive situations is not empowering but disempowering. So if you're not in charge, you may know like only certain people get to be in charge. Well, why can't I be one of those people? Perhaps made you feel small or insignificant or unenlightened. Or why am I not good enough or smart? Like, I've been here for a long time and I feel like I have things to contribute in the world and no one will give me a platform and won't even consider me because I'm not in the in crowd. So, if you have experienced any of these or all of these, please hear me. I am so sorry. Like, let me say I'm sorry. That was not right. It will never be right. It should not have happened to you. I'm sorry the church was not a safe space for you. I'm sorry that the people who should have been protecting you and lifting you up and celebrating you made you feel small and insignificant. And also, if any of those things I mentioned brought like a memory to your mind, let me say this also. You are not crazy. You are not crazy. You do not have to gaslight yourself and be like, maybe I'm just overreacting, it's not that big of a deal, like maybe they didn't mean it that way. What we're looking for is not an isolated event, right? I said this at the beginning, a pattern. If there is a pattern of this, then it happened to you. Just as you can identify a tree by its fruit, so you can identify people by what they do. Good trees produce good fruit. Bad trees produce bad fruit. Good trees and good leaders and faith communities will help you be more open, more honest, more authentic, more accepting, more kind, more merciful and patient and gentle and acting and speaking with self-control and consideration for others and loving towards all. That's in the Bible. If the opposite of that is happening, if you've been in a place or a system or around people who are taking you the opposite direction, then you need to embark on a journey of healing from that. We all do. We all have to journey towards healing together. You've heard the cliche, I'm sure. But it's like, hurt people, hurt people. Things are cliche for a reason. Hurt people, hurt people. We all have hurt. We are human. We all struggle. We are human. We can all benefit from taking steps together towards wholeness and healing. And that's what we're going to talk about next week. Is how do we get out of this? Like, just because something happened, does that mean that it's going to bother us for the rest of our lives? Does it mean that every time something happens remotely similar that we feel hot or cold or we feel anxious or we get that knot in our stomach or we have a headache? Because your body is going to react before your brain does. We have to. If we are going to make the church into something that is even remotely meaningful in today's world, we have to do our own work of healing. Why? So that our fruit will identify us as redeemed and gracious and hopeful and kind and honest Christ followers. Because if we're not journeying towards that, then we might as well quit doing this. And I'm not saying that in any kind of shameful way. Sometimes you have to quit stuff. Healing is hard work, but it's beautiful. It's like when you have a kid. Oh, so hard. So hard and so beautiful. I wouldn't trade the year and 13 months and several days who's counting, of sleepless nights. I wouldn't trade this week because Nova, I love her with my whole, I've never loved anything so much. It's like super cliche, but it's true. I wouldn't trade that for a minute. Healing is worth it. The process is worth it. And next week, we'll still be here next week in this building. We're going to talk about healing and how do we get ourselves to a place where the hope in our hearts that may be really tiny right now, it actually touches all the places that don't feel hopeful and reaches all the parts that feel shameful and heals all the parts that feel a little cracked and dusty. And then we can put that out in the world and we can say, oh, what about Jesus? You can identify me by my actions. If Jesus is something you want to be a part of, do you like my life? Because that's what it looks like. So the band has 2 more songs. So I just invite you all to stand. We're going to sing, and then I'll come back and give you a benediction.
Will we ever rise? Will we ever rise above the fear? Can we learn to see the need? Can we share humanity? I can see another day come. Broken people, we can be made whole. We can be made whole. We can be made whole as we lay down our weapons, open up our hearts. Love is breaking us, love remaking us. Will we ever Okay, so this is the last one. Woo! So it's by a singer called Dana Diaz. It's called Everything I Need. It's a really cute album. You should totally check it out if you want. What can I say about it? The song is really simple. It's, you tell me I'm not alone. You tell me to lift my head. And then the chorus is obviously longer. And then everything else is, you're everything I need. And then there's an outro. But I just love how simple it is. One thing that I picked up about her album, like, for a good portion of the songs, there's like a few songs where there's not a lot of lyrics, but the lyrics that she does use, like, really, like, hit me in my, like, soul. And because there's, like, a lot of space, I feel like it allows me time to, like, marinate on, like, the meaning of the words that are there. Like, I'm not having to focus on a whole lot. There's, like, a lot of space. So I don't know. I just love how this song is really encouraging. Just being reminded that, like, I'm not alone. And it kind of plays into that song Ever Be about, like, being a misfit and feeling like I don't belong. So this is our first time playing this together as a band. And I hope that you all enjoy it. Thank you. You tell me I'm not alone. 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 You tell me to lift my head. 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 Then I see you there looking my way, shining bright like the sun. I see you there looking my way, shining bright like the sun. I see you there looking my way, shining bright like the sun. You're all I need, all I need. You are everything 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 I need. I see you there looking my way, shining bright like the sun. I see you there looking my way, shining bright like the sun. I see you there looking my way, shining bright like the sun. You're all I need, all I need. You are everything 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 I need. You take me down to the river till I'm satisfied. You take me down to the river. give me joy for my morning till I'm satisfied. You give me joy for my morning. You take me down to the river till I'm satisfied. You take me down to the river. You give me joy for my morning till I'm satisfied. You give me joy for my morning. 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 You are everything I need. 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 You are. You take me down to the river till I'm satisfied. You take me down to the river. You give me joy for my morning till I'm still inside. You give me joy for my morning. Try to sing it with us. You take me down to the river till I'm satisfied. You take me down to the river. You give me joy for my morning till I'm still inside. You give me joy for my morning. 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 You are everything I need. 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 You are everything. Just the voices. You are everything I need. 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 One more time. Everything I need. You are everything I need. You are everything I need. You are everything I need.
So good. Y'all would know I'm behind the curtain of mystery during for the last 2 songs. The mystery is I'm just standing there. But you know I'm Pentecostal because I can't stay still. I'm like, everything I need every time. It takes a lot of self-control for me to not be like, everything I need. Okay. On your way out, stop by the Stuff Center. There's free stickers, especially if you're new. Grab a sticker. If you like my shirt, we have them in sticker form, and they are free for you. Also, we have our very cool logo, which Jarrett designed, because he's very cool. Everything he does is cool. No one's clapping for that? That was a cue. You guys missed the cue. Okay, one announcement, and then we will go. Actually, 2. So, Urban Brew and Barbecue, if you want to hang out, come hang out. It's super fun. They have outside space if you're worried about germs. I appreciate y'all being here. Like, it means a lot to me to see your faces, especially after the week I've had. And the announcement is groups will be starting the second week of February. We are going to have a St. Pete in-person group, a Tampa in-person group, and we are having an online deconstruction group. Now, the difference is between these groups, our groups are generally no pressure. Like, we just have open-ended discussion questions based on whatever we talked about that Sunday. If you can come, we love to see you. If you can't, you're not going to get a text being like, you've let God down because you have not read your chapter of your small group material. We don't do any of that. However, the deconstruction group has a specific curriculum. You don't have to do like reading or anything like that, but there will be specific questions. So that is a group that it's probably going to be about 8 weeks long, that you need to commit to. If you sign up for that, like, we want you to be there every week. It will be online. From the comfort of your home, you can unpack all of your religious trauma. Yay! The leader of this group is one of our very own delightful people. Her name is Erin, and she has been through this group already herself. And so there is a cap on this group of 10 people. So if you want it, go to diff.church and sign up for it, but please don't sign up unless you're willing to do the work, because it will be tough and great. If you got some stuff, it's a group for you. Otherwise, we deal with stuff all the time. A regular group, they're just like not pressure. We're just like, come talk about your stuff. We're here. And my group has cookies. I only said that because if you know Isaac and Veronica's group, they like cook full-on meals, which is a bar I will never reach. I can't even aspire to it. They have I can't even. Okay, so the end. That's the end. I'm out of words. I think you can. The end. No, let's pray. Let's pray, and then we will go have an excellent blustery Sunday. Through every age of struggle, every era of hope, the Holy One is our faithful companion. Oppressive forces and institutions seem so permanent, and our individual lives so vulnerable and fleeting. God, deepen our faith in your promises that we may be brave for each other. From spirits that seduce us with power, God delivers us and transforms our hearts. In the hard work of liberating ourselves, God sustains us with joy and courage. Praise God, whose presence is a force for life. Amen. Thanks for being here. See you next week. We're here next week.